So to kick off, I just wanted to ask you to tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about yourself because you are absolutely awesome. I'm one of your biggest girl fans out there. Really around your journey and your experiences and what are you up to nowadays?
Absolutely. So thank you. Very excited to be here. So yeah, a little bit about me. So very long career in finance. Worked for a big international bank for 25 years. Before that, interestingly, something most people don't know is I sold wine for a living. That was quite good fun. And I did telesales. Very different, but really earned my spurs in sales doing the telesales, outbound telesales. Gosh, those were the days. So yeah, 25-year career in finance, which I absolutely loved. Got to work all over the world with lots of different people, lots of different experiences. My last role was a senior role in strategy, looking at small, medium-sized enterprises around the world, what their needs were, and how we support them. So SMEs are really close to my heart. They're such an important part of every economy in the world. Um, Also have always had a massive passion for supporting females, both internally in the organization I worked in, and then also female founders, and sit on the Investing in Women task force, focusing on scaling founders. And also, I am the chair of the Gender Index. So that is the kind of go-to annual report, which tells us about the state of the nation when it comes to female entrepreneurship, how many we have, where are they, what sectors they're in, how are they doing. And so I spend a lot of my time doing that. But I also have a small strategy consultancy working with small businesses and corporates on their strategy. So kind of founders, SMEs, strategy, and elevating the voices of women is probably my life.
So not enough work to go around, right?
No, no, I'm just,
Just in case, right?
yeah,
Okay, great. So I'm gonna start on picking a little bit of that actually. And the first area that I would like to ask you around is very much the shifting landscape for SMEs. I'm gonna ask you three questions because it is an area that we're seeing a lot of change happening.
yeah.
And obviously, when there's change, there's opportunity, but there's also risk. Um, you're an expert in this space, and we are extremely passionate about SMEs at Sherlock because they really sit at the heart of everything that we do and everything that we're wanting to push forward to help them grow and thrive. And the first area is very much around, do you think SMEs are overestimating how much the market is working for them and perhaps underestimating how much control that they might need in today's new normal?
I think it's a real challenge. I think the days of having relative stability across any sector, anywhere in the world, are probably over for now. There's so much going on at a macro point of view that it's if you're doing well, it would be quite easy to kind of rest a bit on your laurels when it comes to looking to the future and how you're going to manage if something changes, given how much changes quite quickly at the moment. So I think for me, a really, really important element for any business, but especially for small businesses, because they tend to have big change will impact them more because they don't have the buffer that a large corporate would have, is you have to really know what you would do if you needed to pivot. So if, for example, the macro conditions change tomorrow, would you know what to do? Would you know how to finance it? Would you know where your customers were coming from? And would you be able to pivot into another area to keep your business going? So I think any small business needs to be thinking that strategically, constantly, and being really clear that they know if something changed, what initial action they would take. And I'm not, small businesses are so cut to the bone in terms of having resourcing and time. I think there's a big risk that they don't take that time and then they can just get hit by something and be surprised. And that is a big risk when you're a small business.
Absolutely, absolutely agree. I think to me, it's if you've got the data that underpins the ability to see that transparently, then it
Yeah.
enables you to then make those decisions quickly and effectively, but with the understanding of what is the knock-on consequence of that.
Yeah.
That brings me to my second question then. Have yesterday's competitive advantages become today's liabilities? We see particularly technology coming to the forefront and increasing that pace of delivery and change and transformation, making it kind of like a daily constant. But can you give us some examples that you might have seen as well?
Yeah, I think embracing the unknown is actually something small businesses are pretty good at because by definition of starting up, they've learned already to embrace the unknown. But I think the pace of change is so much bigger than it used to be. You know, if you just look at AI tools, something that was, said to be like the greatest in the world 3 months ago has already been replaced. So, from a business perspective, that's a really good analogy for how quickly your business can get replaced if you haven't worked out what is coming and how to embrace that change. So, I think that technology and transformation piece is so important. I think you could have been 5 years ago. If you go back 5 years, you could be really good at customer experience.
Mm.
But what looks like really good customer experience 5 years ago might be completely different today and is definitely going to be different in the future. The speed of expectation of reply. And I think a lot of companies underestimate the expectations their clients come with now because it's so quick to be able to look elsewhere. And now technology makes that easier. So I would say the biggest thing risk is not embracing the technology and understanding how it benefits your business and your clients, understanding how that might change your product offering and what you might be able to and being able to pivot quickly. But what I would also layer over to that is what it all comes back to is for me, it's the culture in the business. So the thing all of it comes back to, small businesses can cope with change and pivoting quickly if you having the right conversations, you have the right culture in the business, and don't ever underestimate what people in a small business, what they see, what the staff see. And I see this all the time when you talk to founders. I work with an amazing founder at the moment who's going through a huge pivot. So this is a really good example of trying to work out if they completely change the direction of the business because the world has partly moved on from what they were doing. And she said to me, the first thing I've done is I've sat down on my team and I've asked them. Now, that is takes guts. You have to know your team really well to do that. But she's done such a good job of building a real good culture that although that might be scary for them, it's massively benefited her because they've seen stuff she hadn't. And actually, that's enabled her to work out what they want to do as a firm and has given her the confidence that she's going in the right direction. And so I think embracing technological change and doing it quickly and being able to pivot where needed and paying attention to the world, but also bringing it back to the people you have in your team. And if you've built
Yeah.
a good culture, you can weather most things because they'll be in it with you.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, you know how passionate I am about, the people are what make organizations, right? They are the blood that keeps your entire organization from breathing, living, and succeeding. Or if you've got a bad culture, it's the one that stops, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, fantastic. And I guess the last area really is how do you distinguish between real growth capability and growth that is just riding momentum? I mean, in particular, we have seen when founders get a big check at the beginning, and there's a lot of PR, there's a lot of amazing capital going around, but the sustainability of that capital, right? How do you really tell whether you're an investor or a small business yourself? From ensuring that that is not suddenly going to tank downwards.
So I think there's a couple of really key things for businesses actually irrelevant of size, but because the impact is so extreme in a small business environment, it's a really important one. I think you have to stay true to what your anchor that you're trying to achieve is. So what one of the biggest things you need to be really clear on is where you're trying to get to, and don't get swayed by, oh, well, we've got some money here, so we could go off and do something else. or or someone else, our competitors doing this, and we have to do it. If you're really clear and you've really stress tested what you want to do and you've got your direction right, the big question for me always, especially as an investor, is can they acquire customers consistently, but without heroic effort? So can they continue to get that momentum and keep it going if you stripped out all of the exciting, shiny stuff? And as you scale, can you do it without denigrating or degrading the quality of what you do? Because that's how you keep your customers. So all businesses are pretty straightforward, actually, in terms of what makes them successful. Is are they clear what they're trying to achieve? Can you get new customers consistently? Can you keep them? And actually, that doesn't matter who your customer is. That could be a member of the public, it could be retail, it could be manufacturing, it could be a corporate, it could be domestic, it could be international. If you can get customers without it costing you a huge amount or being really difficult, and when you get them, you can keep them. If you do that consistently, your business will be successful, right? As long as you know your money. So I think if you're looking at tailwinds and you're looking at changes in the economic cycle, the important thing is can I do that consistently with the right people, going back to that people piece? And if you can, and you strip out all the excitement and the shiny stuff, then you've got a really good business model.
I love that because it is a little bit about the discipline, right? We
Yeah,
see that a lot of SMEs take this approach, and founders in particular, where they see as being busy is seen as always
yeah,
constantly being successful and going in the right direction, where sometimes you might be going after the wrong shiny ball.
yeah, yeah,
So I guess within that, my question is very much around, does that sometimes, I mean, you've answered the question, does it lack sometime or mask the lack of strategic clarity sometimes
yeah,
in SMEs? And I guess the next one is, do you think that impacts the talent that they
yeah,
can attract and
yeah.
that they can go after?
Yeah, and I've got a quote that I really love, which you can actually use in any walk of life, whether it's business or personal, which is you are what you do every day. And I think if you're not really clear as the leader in a business as to what you're trying to achieve and you don't have clear strategy, it's very easy to get waylaid. And having that clarity enables you to do stuff consistently. And consistency is what makes you successful. It's like if you speak to any successful sports person, and I can't remember who said the quote. I think it was Tiger Woods, but it might have been someone else. Actually, it might have been Michael Jordan. And someone said, "Oh, you're really lucky." And he said, "It's amazing how lucky I get the more I practice." And it's
Yeah, I
about
love that.
consistency, right? So I think you have to think about ignore the shiny stuff, the awards, the looking busy, because there's a lot of that. Be clear on what you're trying to achieve and then do that stuff consistently. Go back and check it, like give yourself a sense check. But if you don't have a clear sense of direction, it's hard to get talent and it's hard to be successful. Another analogy I would use is, and I use this with my clients, is for anyone who's like me, watched or read Alice in Wonderland as a kid, right? In Alice in Wonderland, there's a point where Alice comes across the Cheshire Cat, and there are two forks in the road. And she says to the Cheshire Cat, I am paraphrasing here, which fork shall I take? And the cat says, where are you trying to go? She says, I don't know. And so he says, then it doesn't matter which direction you take. And I think that is really important when it comes to running a business. It's very easy to get taken off on a path
Mm.
if you're not really clear where you're trying to get to. On the plus side, if you're clear where you're trying to get to, it's super easy to say no to stuff that is, I call it shiny object syndrome. Like we go, oh, that's exciting. Or an investor says, oh, I'll give you some extra money if you do this because I think this is quite interesting. Or, one of your advisors has got an idea that's not in your plan. It's very hard to say no unless you have a very clear set of tactics and strategies and you're very clear where you're anchoring towards. Because then you just get to go, no, we're just going to do this. And back to your question around talent, talented people want to work for successful businesses. Businesses are successful if they have focus and they have a sense of direction. So if you want to bring your people with you, you have to have that sense of direction. You then need to communicate it to them so they've got the same sense of direction. but it's really hard. Like that sort of stuff is not easy to do. And you look at the successful people in the world and they're good at it.
Which is down to leadership sometimes, right? And it's
Absolutely.
actually self-awareness
Yeah.
in a leader because we all love those shiny objects. And I kind of feel like I'm getting a coaching session here. This is fantastic. Uh, because actually we suffered from that in the past, right? And it's sometimes a challenge being able to tell the difference between, or actually knowing where to tread the line between
Yeah.
this is such useful information that actually we are finding that we will need to pivot versus actually staying straight towards achieving that strategy that you're targeting. And it's not a predefined question that we have on here, but what would be your advice for founders to be able to say when do we call it? When we need to
Yeah.
put that focus or when we need to be listening and actually pivoting because this isn't working.
So I think, so it depends on the business, but I would say if you have put some good sets of advisors, so I would always say if you're setting a strategy and then anchoring yourself to something, do that in an informed way. So spend a bit of time sitting in it and working out where you're trying to get to, because that means it's more likely to be right. Once you've done that, set yourself some, you know, I come from finance, we love a KPI. Set yourself a performance indicator. Set yourself like, what do I want to achieve by when? And if you haven't, really critically assess why and ask other people. And that's the bit that I think people really struggle with. We all struggle with it because you're going to them going, it hasn't quite worked out. Why do you think that is? Because that's a really vulnerable thing to do. But if you do that well, that will intuitively tell you when you need to pivot. Because I think pivoting is as important as setting the strategy in the first place, if it's
Yeah.
needed, but pivoting in an informed way is the key, right? Which is, okay, we said we do this. And I think one of the biggest things and where a lot of founders will struggle because it's very personal, because it's their idea, is accepting that their original idea wasn't the right one and that
Mm.
they get to pivot. And I call it pivot, not failure. I don't like the word failure. It's pivoting.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
There's no failure in
it's
innovation.
no,
They're all just
exactly.
learning opportunities.
You've learned, you've worked out, and then you're like, okay, so I've learned that now. So let's go be successful in this direction. But you have to do it in a strategic, structured way, or it will all get unraveled. And I think that's where a lot of super, super bright founders who've got brilliant ideas, that's when they struggle to succeed, is they pivot, but they kind of almost pivot. But
Mm.
it's really hard to go, do you know what? The thing I'm wedded to and I absolutely love is just not working. Let me go do something else.
Yeah.
That's the hardest bit.
Again, and this weighs into the strategy as a signaling tool,
Yeah,
right? Which, it's the key thing that defines you as to whether you're investable, credible, and durable to
yeah,
the others in the ecosystem around you.
yeah.
Are there any key things that you would recommend a founder that the investors in particular or the lenders are looking for?
In terms of being to show that you're credible.
Yeah, to show that you're credible, to show that you are pursuing the right strategy, that you
Yeah,
are still tracking and listening and aware of your progress, your surroundings, your
yeah.
target.
I think we'll go back to what I said before, is it's all about consistency. Know where you're trying to go. You know, if you sit in front of anybody and you say, you know, pick a life situation, I want to achieve X, whatever it is. Um, if you set a goal, and when I coach this, I call it your anchor. You set yourself an anchor. You're really clear, and that's a very structured anchor of where you're trying to get to. You know, let's use a personal example rather than business. I want to get fit enough to run a marathon in 6 months, right? That's your anchor. That's your mission. Time barred, specific, right? In a certain time, maybe, if you're that crazy. I don't know why I use marathon because there's not a hope I'm ever going to run a marathon, but hey, we'll use it because lots of people do this, right? You then have to line out a couple of strategies to get you there, right? Really sensible things. I'm going to start running and I'm going to increase it every week and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to eat right. Right. Pick whatever you like. And then you keep to those strategies. You're really clear. But on a regular basis, you stop back in and go, is that working? Is there any more information I can take in to know that it's working? And then track that. So if you want to do it in a certain time, you need to improve the time you run, like how quickly you run. And it's no different in business. And if you can articulate that clearly, I think there are two major things that investors will look for. Anybody who's going to put something behind you, whether it's a bank going to give you money, an investor or a non or a customer who's going to buy from you, is do they understand what they're doing and where they're trying to get to? Do they know how to pivot when needed? And how are they measuring when a pivot might be needed?
I
If you've
love
got all of
it.
those
Mm,
and you can do that consistently, then that is the key to success. But what's
yeah,
really interesting is if you get those strategies and those tactics right, you can then remove the anchor and pay no attention to it, and you'll still get there. So you can stop worrying about it, which psychologically is a really important thing because it just means you can just get on with stuff, which means there's less that in your brain.
yeah. And in the meantime, you're building that credibility, that track record,
Yeah,
that people are assessing your performance on, right?
yeah.
And yourself. Fabulous. Well, then I guess let's weave this into the second area that I wanted to talk to you about, which is you are a huge proponent of women, women doing business, and female founders in particular. Um, we all know the stats. There's a lot of bias. There's, a lot of underinvestment, but yet we're 51% of the population. We run businesses more successfully. Credibility is a huge component
Yeah.
that underpins uh, the flow of capital in particular, right? But for female founders, do you think there's a higher credibility threshold, subtly, shaping those conversations and the capital allocation by investors and partners?
Sadly, I don't think it's subtle. Um, I've heard so many stories, and actually, there's a piece of research I think Harvard Business Review did around the questions women get asked. So women generally get asked more kind of prevention orientated questions rather than encouraging. So you are much more likely to get asked by a panel of investors if you're going for investment as a woman questions like, how would you cope if you went off and had children? I don't think I've ever heard a male founder ask that. I know countless female founders that get asked that.
Mm,
Um, and if it all goes wrong, how do we get our money back? Whereas men get asked, okay, you've said you can 10x this, can you 100x it? And I think that is around a judgment that women are not as credible. And as you know, I get very frustrated. I can get my little soapbox out and stand on it very quickly because actually women return better returns on investment than men do. And that's not just a UK thing, that is a global thing. They also are less likely to default on debt. They're less likely to fall into bankruptcy. And so actually women are really good at running businesses because we approach it from a very risk aware standpoint. But that doesn't seem to impact the credibility we get given when we walk into the room. And I think some of that is visibility. I think if you're a venture capital firm or an angel syndicate, and all you ever see is men coming through, and all the people you've backed before happen to have been male and you've made lots of money, there is a bias that says, well, this has worked before, so we'll carry on doing it. I understand that. That's just human nature. The problem is actually women are really good at it, but a lot of those people aren't seeing it. They're not seeing that they're good at it. And so they do treat women as if they're not as good at running businesses. And that is a big problem. And it's a problem not just for the founders, it's a problem for the economy
absolutely.
because we're missing out on literally hundreds of billions of additional money coming into the economy if more women got backed. And that's it. For me, that's the thing we should be talking about, which is it does not make economic sense not to back more women because we're really good at doing this.
Absolutely agree. I mean, one of my superpowers is I like to go and when I walk into an investor room is I'm actually really good at making money. I've got the track record,
Yeah.
I've got the evidence, the previous businesses, but also, the track record in banking. And yet, it's not just me who faces that, the oh, what if, mentality and the lack of capital flowing our way.
Yeah.
um, which sometimes, forces, we've seen this with other founders that, they either overcompensate or try to move themselves into a wedge of perfection. Do you think this then, creates a trust inflection point into their credibility? Do you think it succeeds? What are your observations when
Yeah.
founders try and navigate around that?
Yeah. I think it's really hard because, there has been guidance in the past, which is like we just turn up like the men do. But the problem is the society treats us differently. So you kind of have to turn up as you. And one of the things, and you and I have talked about this before, is one of the things that helps women be credible is talking about their numbers. Don't shy away from
Absolutely.
them. Be really clear on your numbers. Be really straightforward. This is what we can achieve. And understand as well the way the system works, which is lots of founders will go in front of an investment panel and they proper height their numbers, right? They're overly ambitious, let's call it. And everyone in the room knows it's overly ambitious. Women are much less likely to do that. But psychologically, the people looking at the numbers won't automatically go, oh, it's a woman. So she's going to be much more realistic on her numbers. They're thinking these numbers look less impressive than the numbers I saw before. And if she then doesn't talk really hard to how robust those numbers are, then it's an issue. But I believe women should be able to turn up as they are and who they are because that brings so much to what they do. I think the industry needs to shift. I think the one thing I think women do need to make sure they're doing is talking to the numbers and to the money and doing that confidently. And society doesn't teach us that in a way that it should. So we need to own that. But I think the industry really needs to recognize, and there's stuff going on to do that, whether it's ring fencing money or more venture capital firms joining things like the Investing in Women Code and sharing their numbers of how many women they back. There are a number of them that are focused specifically on women, so they get some of these dynamics. And they are showing that backing women makes really good money. And that's what we need to do. Is if you continue to show that backing women is good for the economy, those who haven't changed are going to have to. Like I always say, I love a bit of FOMO. Like, let's just smash it. Let's help the women who are smashing it, smashing it. Let's get companies like Sherlock being super successful. Let's get companies run by women super successful, not at the expense of the male-led companies, but just let's get these women out there, amplify their voices and tell their stories. And so we're I was going to say subtly. I'm not big on subtle. But so what we're doing is getting it out into the ether that backing a woman is really normal. Because then you'll start to see a shift. If you see some of the funds that are being put out the door to women making really good returns, the ones who aren't doing it will go, well, why are you doing? Why is your fund doing really well? And why am I not? Oh, your dynamics are slightly different. And that's when you get a industry shift.
I love it. I love it. I mean, this is music to my ears. As you know, we are fundraising right now,
Yeah.
going back through the whole in front of investors, talking about our big vision, talking about our track record, leading with our numbers. And yet we are still, facing those barriers. So the more capital that is flowing into this, the more we can amplify. We are one of thousands of companies that have been there, done that, being run by women, female founders, or diverse founders that have been there, done that, have that track record. They're going bigger to try and have that positive impact into the growth of the economy. And yet we are still not seeing that capital flowing fast
Yeah.
enough.
No.
So definitely something that is needed. And I one of the things I love is, and I listen to it as I go walking with my dog in the mornings, is your beginner's guide to being a grown up, your own podcast.
Yes.
I have been known to then go in and like gush around some of the beautiful nuggets of insight and value and just humility, people talking about their journey. It's, to really bring to light that it's not easy. It's not what you see on the glossy, top 0.00001% of successful entrepreneurs. Um, but from your vantage point, where are business owners most confused about their strategic maturity, how it is being received, how the opportunities are opening up for them, and et cetera, et cetera. Because I feel like we should probably have a completely separate episode just to ask you questions around all of your insights that you've gleaned from your podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I really need to write a book because we've done 50 episodes now, and oh my God, it's been so fascinating listening to the journeys that people go through. I think in terms of the pitfalls that I've seen just from listening to those, and some are founders, some are in corporate life, there's a lovely mix of people. Um, but if you relate that back to running a business, is pivoting, not failure, is fine. And in fact, that part of your journey is more important than being successful because you learn more from it. Nobody that I've interviewed has rocked up and gone, do you know what? I had an idea. I walked into an investor space. They gave me millions of pounds. I recruited all the right people the first time. All the tech went well. We launched it on the day we said we were going to. We made lots of money and then I sold it. Like that just doesn't happen, right?
It's so nice.
Well, you
But no, I
say that,
agree.
Karen, but you
Or
and I both know
maybe
you would be bored out of your brain if it was that straightforward. So
that
I
is
think
true.
it's the old adage, which is it's the climb, right? It's the journey, not the
Mm,
destination. And the destination's important so you know whether or not you're going in the right direction. But the journey is as important. And those pivots you have to make are the things that make you who you are and teach you how to be successful the next time. But so I think acknowledging that is a really important thing. Um, I think the other thing that founders are not great at is telling their story in a way that works for the person they're talking to. So they will have their narrative. This is why I started it. I've seen this a lot with founders, right? I have a passion for this, so I started the business doing this. They will tell the same story, whether they're talking to a friend, an employee, or an investor, right? But you need to pivot and change the way you talk based on what you're trying to get out of the conversation and be a little bit more strategic about those conversations. If you're talking to an investor, I have a business that does this. My intention is to make this. If you give me this much money, this is how much I'm going to give you back.
Okay, I have to stop here and say this is amazing advice. Uh, because I have been that founder which goes in and literally somebody had to call me out on it. And I've needed coaching for this because, especially when you go on the conveyor belt of pitching sessions, you start forgetting to take the time, take a little bit of a step back as you're preparing, understand who you are pitching to, and not all investors will have the same uh,
No.
approach, insight, understanding, investment strategy, and. So
Yeah.
thank you. That is incredibly useful information
And I
for.
think the way I would drill it down is I would say, remember, there's a song about all there's a song, isn't there, called All About You? It's the opposite. It's not about you. It's about the person you're talking to. And if your default to those conversations is, what do they need from this conversation, not what do I need to tell them, it completely reframes the conversation that you have. What does the person you're talking to, is that's a customer, what do they need? If it's an employee, what do they need? If it's an investor or a board member, what do they need out of that conversation for you to get what you want?
Mm. It is about articulating that message and that
Yeah,
value,
yeah,
which again, you've also seen in your experience with, working with SMEs more generally, not just
yeah,
founders, right?
yeah. And it's one of the things I actually used to teach it. So I one of the roles I headed up a learning department in my corporate finance time, which was fascinating, complete pivot for me. And I had no idea what I was doing when I started. I learned so much. It was amazing. And I have a passion for learning, which is why I went into it. And I had so much support to learn to do it well. But one of the things I literally used to stand on a stage and get hundreds of people to do. And people still come up to me today and say, I remember that session and I use it all the time, is a thing called a central message, which is you need to be clear on your central message. And then you need to be able to articulate it to anybody in any circumstance in a way that lands with them. But if you can be really clear what that central message is and you can continuously come back to your central message, then you will be successful. Those people will hear it, but you have to practice it.
Incredibly useful. I need to take that. I'm like, if I wasn't doing the podcast, like, reading my notes, I would be writing it all down. But this is being recorded, so I'm going to take notes later.
I seriously am thinking I should stick it in a book. But the
You
learns for the
should.
podcast are fascinating. Like just people's journeys are so interesting. Um, and as you know, we're launching a new one as well, in which you are in the first episode, which I am super excited about, which is all about that female founder journey and the economics of backing women. And I think telling those stories and amplifying those stories, the conversation we're having today, like, you know what, it's hard.
Mm,
That's okay.
yeah. And
They're
it's
really
okay.
important
We just
stories.
roll with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So actually, on that note, what would be your one key message to leave this podcast with? I mean, there's so many of them. I'm like, where to start?
Right,
Um,
one key message. I'm going to be cheeky and leave with two.
okay, I love it. Yes.
Um, Partly because I'm incapable of doing what I'm told. Um, my first one is a cheeky shout out, which is we are launching a new podcast, which is called Women Are Good Business, which is all about a campaign about backing women and the economics behind them. So please, my one ask is have a look, have a follow. We're on Instagram and we will be launching the podcast in April, which has Karen on it. But in terms of the wider strategy piece for all businesses, is you have to know where you're trying to go. If you want to get somewhere, you have to know where you're trying to go, but you have to be willing to pivot if it's not working.
Absolutely. And when you're wanting to go needs to be underpinned by the numbers too. If I can just add my
Oh
little.
my God, yes. Yes.
Fabulous, fabulous. Sam, it was amazing having you on this. And thank you for your time spending it with us and giving us so much information and so many insightful tips. Please definitely go off and write that book because I will be the first one, putting forward an order, not just for myself, but actually to share it with other people because we don't amplify these messages enough.
No.
And I think we owe it to the next generation. We've got to pay it forward
Yeah.
to really spark that enthusiasm and that entrepreneurial spirit in everyone,
Yeah.
whether they're in a corporate or they're, undergoing their own founder journey and their experiences. So thank you very much for joining us on this.
My pleasure. It's been great fun. There's a